And so when I was in second grade, I was asked to play in the high school in Brainerd, Minnesota, and so that's about 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis. And so I was invited to play with that orchestra, and as a second grader, I was like actually just so scared. I didn't want to, play with like maybe like your age kids, and I was like, it was really nerve-wracking for me, but honestly those few years of orchestra and playing with like older kids really helped me. And so I would actually get picked up from school in a little bus, and they'd bring me over to the high school, and that's where I'd finish my day, not just for yourself, but like for other people as well. And it's really a gift to be able to play, and the work that you put into it really will pay off, because I never expected to go into a pageant and compete. I never expected to like be Miss Minnesota. I was not. But the reason I want to talk about that is because you may all have different ideas of where you want to take your music, right? Some of you may want to be orchestra teachers. You may want to go into music, performance. But whatever you do, it doesn't really change the way that you prepare for that now. And one of the biggest things I tell students is that music was a huge part of my life, but it wasn't the only thing that I focused on. I think academics and sports are incredibly important, because what you learn as a musician ties over to how you study, how you train for a sport. How many of you are in like extracurricular activities that don't involve orchestra? Okay, how many of you find that like something that you learn in orchestra ties over into like how you study? I mean, there are a lot of ways in which music does that. And so for instance, I used to practice an hour at a time, 10-minute break. And I actually use that as a pharmacy student now. Like I study for 50 minutes, I take a 10-minute break. That's something I first learned as a violinist, as a musician. And so there are ways in which your practice ties over, and there's also ways in which your performance can tie over to what you do outside of music. And so one thing that I really enjoyed doing this past year was being able to like serve other people with my music. Because in a lot of ways, when we practice, when we perform, we're not really doing it for ourselves, right? I mean, in any profession that you go into, whether it be a music-related profession or not, you're studying, you're practicing, you're doing these things in order to be a service to other people. Musicians are like a service to their audience. And so if you can increase the quality of your service by practicing, by studying, by whatever else you do, that's huge, and that makes a difference. It makes a real difference. And so people were better than me. And at that time, I had only been playing for a few years, and so I had a lot to learn. And I had a lot to learn about how the orchestra functions as a whole, how each individual person in the orchestra has a part. Even if all the first violins are playing the first violin part, all the second violin part, and so on, you can even divide that up, even more into each individual person. Each individual person has that responsibility, and how we all have to kind of work together, be listening and be aware of one another in order to really come together as a whole and make that group as a whole as good as you can. In my life, I found that working and playing and practicing the violin opened up doors that I didn't know were there. And that was, for me, Miss Minnesota. So I was actually asked if I wanted to like dedication. Sports, school, relationships with other people. You had to be dedicated to other people in your jobs one day.
And so all these things that I had learned about the violin, I was able to translate into those different areas of life and as Miss Minnesota. And so